And while we're sending messages to President Obama today, here's one more. Stop apologizing for this great nation and start defending her. Keeping these terrorists detained is important, it's necessary, but it's not enough for us to win this war. We also have to be able to get good intelligence. And there's no question but that in the time President Obama has been in office, he's diminished our capacity to do so. Last April, you all know he released the details of our enhanced interrogation program, a program we know saved lives and prevented attacks. But he stopped the program and he said, don't worry, I'm going to replace it with something else. I'm going to have my National Security Council set up the high-value interrogation program, the HIG. At about that same time last August, Attorney General Holder said he's going to start investigating and maybe prosecuting the CIA officers who kept us safe after 9/11. Well, since then, guess how many al-Qaeda terrorists have been interrogated by the HIG? That's right, none. But during that same period of time, this administration has been working day in and day out, investigating, questioning, and possibly prosecuting many CIA officials. Now, one can't help but think that they don't understand who the enemy is. So let's help them out. Attorney General Holder and President Obama, the CIA officials who kept us safe after 9/11 are patriots. They deserve our thanks and our praise, and they don't deserve to be the targets of a politically motivated investigation by your Justice Department. Now, the next time you hear President Obama say he's using every tool at his disposal to fight terrorists, remember this. He revealed our enhanced interrogation program to the terrorists, and then he stopped paying attention. He failed to follow up for nearly a year. He couldn't be bothered to make sure that his National Security Council had actually established a new interrogation program. And it turns out they hadn't. Now, if President Obama wants to keep this nation safe, he's got to make it a priority. Our counterterrorism systems will erode without constant, daily presidential oversight and vigilance. Fighting terrorism cannot be President Obama's part-time job. There is an equally troubling story of incompetence, misjudgment, and presidential neglect leading up to the Christmas Day attack itself. Now remember, the Christmas Day bomber was trained and armed in Yemen. And it's worth reviewing a bit of the history here for Vice President Biden's benefit. During the presidential transition, the Bush counterterrorism team briefed the Obama team about the threat from Yemen and what we were doing to address the threat. In June of 2009, America was attacked by a terrorist who had just returned from Yemen, who was under investigation by the FBI, who walked into a recruiting station in Little Rock and killed an American soldier. In September, the president's own counterterrorism advisor, John Brennan, traveled to Saudi Arabia, where he was briefed personally by Mohammed bin Nayef, the head of Saudi intelligence. Bin Nayef had himself just been the target of an assassination attempt, where the bomber used precisely the same kind of bomb the Christmas Day bomber used. And there have been press reports that intelligence sources believe the bombs may have been made by the same bomb maker in Yemen. In 2009, in November, we had the attack at Fort Hood, where 13 Americans were killed by a terrorist with ties to the same cleric in Yemen who trained the Christmas Day bomber. Despite all of that, on December 20th, 2009, President Obama released 6 Yemeni detainees from Guantanamo back to Yemen. And of course, we had the Christmas Day attack on December 25th. That's just what's publicly known. There is no doubt that the daily intelligence briefings this administration has received contain far more information about the threat from Yemen. But after all this history, on January 7th, Counterterrorism Advisor Brennan and Secretary of Homeland Security Napolitano gave a brief at the White House. And they said, quote, they were surprised that al-Qaeda in Yemen is operational. And then Secretary Napolitano went on to say she was, quote, surprised that al-Qaeda would launch individuals against us. Somebody needs to get her a newspaper subscription. Now, there's no polite way to put this, but that kind of incompetence gets people killed. And yet no one has been held accountable. Now, during the 2008 campaign, President Obama admitted he did not have a lot of experience. But he told us what he did have was wisdom and judgment. The kind of wisdom, he said, we would need in a nation facing tough crises. Well, the record is now clear. A wise man would not give the mastermind of 9/11 a platform in civilian court on American soil from which to preach jihad. A wise man would not usher al-Qaeda-trained terrorists onto American soil. A wise man wouldn't fret about whether a terrorist had been read his Miranda rights. And a wise man would hire better people. Now, this president's policies, the very radical nature of the changes he wants to impose a duty on each and every one of us in this room. It is critically important that we stand up and speak out, that we make our voices heard. And they'll try to prevent it. We've seen how much the White House dislikes being criticized and attacked. We've seen what they've tried to do to Fox News, to the Chamber of Commerce, to doctors, really to anyone who disagrees with them. So they're going to fight back against us. They'll try to attack us, and they'll play dirty. They'll try to silence us. But this is America. And far too many brave young men and women have paid too high a price for our right to speak. So join with me right here, right now. Let's send an unmistakable message to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. President Obama, you will never silence us. There is one man in particular we all know who certainly has taught me what it means to have the courage of your convictions. You know who I'm talking about. For my whole life, he has taught me to stand up for what I believe in and to fight for what's right. And often, before big speeches like this one, I ask his opinion, I seek his advice. Well, today, instead, I brought him with me.